On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, you are going to be joined by Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn, along with Connor Rodgers, breaking down the Buffalo Bills New York Jets Monday Night Football matchup. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, football is back. We are doing a regular season real football preview. How are you doing?
I'm so excited for this. It's so much different. Preparing, even it's tough right now. We'll talk to Connor about it this week. It's tough to prepare for week one matchup, even this first few weeks, but we have real football. We have real things to talk about. We'll have some speculation involved in this episode of what we're going to see, but we're done with speculation. We know who starters are. We heard some announcements for starters today. Like, it's go time. And I couldn't be more excited. And we get to start, like you said, inviting Connor over, one of my absolute favorite guests, big matchup, primetime Monday night. Like, how are you not excited?
Absolutely. But before we get into all the fun with Connor, who will be joining us in just a second, Aaron and I want to have some fun along with you guys in Bills Mafia. We are going to be helping our fantastic new sponsor, Leftern, host a new block party here coming up the Saturday before the home opener on Saturday, September 16th, noon to 6 p.m., right there in the 500 block of the downtown Buffalo area. Come and hang out with us. Ton of cool apparel and accessory businesses are going to be open. Awesome food, all kinds of fun stuff. And Aaron and I will be doing a live show.
We will be down there. I'm actually heading down tomorrow to meet Greg and set up and see what the setup's going to look like for the show. Super excited for this one. We're going to have some really fun guests. We got Nate and Bulldog from WGR. We got Alex Brasky coming, Pat Moran, Catherine Fitzpatrick there. And so it's going to be a fun group coming in. And then obviously all these, if you can't read this, if you're listening on podcast, the apparel, tailgating essentials, food and beverage offerings are off the chart for this. This is going to be a fun weekend, fun way to celebrate the Bills being back.
Absolutely. Some fun. I've never had Macy's Pizza. I'm kind of excited to try that out. I know Drew and Amon will be over there from Q42 and Girls Mafia. All kinds of cool stuff. Obviously we'll be able to go into the shop at Leftern, Oxford, Pennant, Dell, and the guys at 26 Shirts. Just tons of really good stuff. And obviously a great time to be able to talk about the Bills. And without further ado, hopefully we'll be talking about a Bills victory, but it won't be an easy one if we do. To talk about that, Connor Rodgers, the busiest man in sports media. Connor, we talked about it before we brought you on here. We were going to list out your titles, but there wasn't enough room in the StreamYard banner to list all the things that you're doing now. How many different things do you have you doing right now?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Thank you, guys. I work full time at NBC.
Right.
I've been getting in the car and driving to work again Monday to Friday. That's a wild thought,
that's
right?
a new thing.
It really is. So we've been doing the Fantasy Football Happy Hour show. Me, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. We've been doing that 12 to 1 Monday to Friday. And then I also obviously do Jets pre and post game. I think that's why I'm here with you guys tonight, of course. I do the Mets pod for SMY, but it's like 40 minutes a week, and the Mets, their season's over. So we talk about the minor leaguers. It's really just a good time. And then I do the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, of course, also for Pro Football Focus, which is all draft, way look ahead. So I've been busy. I just adopted a dog, by the way, too.
Hey,
so it's like, it's been amazing, but it's also like a new wrinkle thrown into the kickoff
it's a lot of work, man.
season. It is. She's 5, so she's, let me say this. Like, I've raised a puppy before, and this is a lot different. She's just like, okay, I'm just happy to be here. Like, walk me, feed me, let me sit on the couch and, chill. Yeah. So it's been fun, man. I'm so excited to obviously catch up with you guys. This is always one of my favorite times of the year when we get to do this.
So before we get into some of the nitty gritty breakdown of things, I know I've been enjoying Hard Knocks myself. Obviously, the buzz around the Jets, I don't know if it could be higher for any other team in the NFL. Yeah. I think maybe there's some tied with it, but there's nobody with more buzz coming into this season. What is it like around the Jets fandom in what has to be probably the most genuine optimism in quite a while?
Right. I think it's excitement, which is rare for sure, because I mean, this is a fan base hasn't had a ton to look forward to for the last 10 plus years. I think they've been sold multiple rebuilds that haven't worked. I think they've been disappointed with, different plans that never align, GMs and head coaches on different timelines, free agent signings, trying to keep a roster afloat while missing on too many draft picks. So, they've been disappointed over and over again. And I think that there's this weird misconception with this fan base. And don't get me wrong, every fan base has their fair share of, loudmouths that say just outrageous things. But every fan base in the NFL has one. So if you want to find that, you could find it.
Yeah.
I think the majority of the fan base, on the other hand, is just excited that the team matters again. I mean, they have the longest running playoff drought, tied with the Buffalo Sabres in the main four professional sports, because the Sacramento Kings got that off their back. So that's a stain that you're dying to wipe away just to watch your team in a playoff game. I mean, it's insane. I look at it like this. God, the last time everybody was like, "Oh, the Jets on Hard Knocks is this bad?" I'm like, the last time they made the playoffs was the year they were on the Hard Knocks. Like it's just hilarious to me.
Not a bad omen,
right? And of course, no matter where Aaron Rodgers went, the media attention was going to follow. Yeah. It just coincided that it's with the Jets, who people are trying to find something to be excited about. So it's interesting to me. I think I've had this conversation with you guys too. All the pundits picking the Jets, or all of the other people on the other side of the things that are like, oh, this will blow up in their face. It's funny to me to just sit back and try to have a nuanced take. Like, I think this team is somewhere in the middle of that. I think they're a competitive roster. I think they have a nice floor because of the defense. I think having capable quarterback play gives them a bigger ceiling than they had last year. I think they can win 10 or 11 games. I think they could sneak into the playoffs and maybe surprise somebody. It's just so funny to see every conversation is, can the Jets, everything they did, win a Super Bowl, or is it going to blow up in their face and they win 4 or 5 games? And it's crazy how nobody will have the real conversation of what the team actually is.
So I do want to ask you about this a little bit, because you said wherever Rodgers goes, there was going to be fanfare, and I agree with that. But him going to New York is just a mix of explosive, like the New York media just can't even handle it, right? You're down there, you see it. That type of pressure that comes from New York media, we don't experience it here in Buffalo. Like, we had high expectations last year, didn't meet them. It got a little tense, but it stayed here in Buffalo. Like, it didn't really leak out all that much. Everything that happens in New York under a magnifying glass at all times. If it starts to, I'm not saying blow up in their face, but say they start off hot and then, hey, November comes around and it's a little bit of a lull and things are going. Do you think, I guess a long story short here to get to it, Hard Knocks, I loved Robert Saleh going into Hard Knocks. Coming out of Hard Knocks, I felt like he was a little bit phony. Do you feel like they have the right guys in place to handle the pressure that comes with adding Aaron Rodgers to one of the best young rosters in football?
I'm more curious about Hackett than Saleh and Ulbrich. I mean, to be fair to Saleh and Ulbrich, they proved last year what they can do with the defense, and they've scouted well. I mean, I get Joe Douglas and his group get a lot of credit for that, but it's no coincidence the Jets' 2020 draft with a different staff was terrible, to be honest with you, with a totally different head coach and defensive coordinator. I think, and I've talked to people behind the scenes that have known Saleh since he was an assistant coach, not DC. Like, I'm talking like linebackers coach, and he's always had a really good eye for defensive talent up front with pass rushers and off-ball guys and even corners. And I think that's something he doesn't get enough credit for, unfortunately. I get why you would think that too, watching Hard Knocks. It feels almost extra. But what's wild is this is who he is. I mean, I've talked to guys that played for him many years ago, and this is just who he is every day. You sit down in the meeting room, and it's a lot of energy, and it's not going to be for everybody, but it does get guys to buy in. I think that below all of that, because that's the noise, right? They've been able to develop some young talent for the first time in forever. I mean, this is a team that could not develop any draft picks. And now you look at whether it's UDFA like Bryce Huff, or whether it's obviously more higher end picks like a Sauce Gardner, even guys off the scrap heap waiver wire like Quincy Williams, who just got an extension, who was a failed pick by Jacksonville and has really found his footing playing next to CJ Mosley. So listen, there's no way around it. If the Jets struggle this year, it's going to fall on Saleh, right? Rodgers is here beyond this year. I mean, we've made that much clear with his restructure. Woody's not going anywhere. The roster is in place. I think Joe Douglas has made enough personnel moves that his footing feels pretty safe. And I am one of Robert Saleh's biggest supporters, but there's no denying if things go wrong for the Jets this year and you have to find a fall guy, he, of course, is going to be in the crosshairs, and he knows that. He'd be the first to tell you that they got to win games this year. They haven't won a lot of games the first 2 years. They have improved from his first year to his second year, but a bigger step is needed in that third year. And there's no denying all the pressure. All the pressure will fall on him.
How many times do you think he had to ask to do the Tony Soprano drive?
Man, just
Like
just perfect. As somebody that's from New York and lived in Jersey for 9 years, I mean, it was corny, but you still appreciate it because it's HBO and it's absolute roots.
They have the rights. They're allowed to use it.
You know,
I do got to tease.
Right.
As somebody that lived in New Jersey, you got to check our sponsor for the show. These prints behind me does prints. We're going to talk about the print later here, but you got to go check out. I'll send it to you. I'll send you a DM of the print and see what you think is somebody down in that area.
It's pretty great. You'll like it when you see it.
I'm laughing at I like the comments that didn't like me bringing the Sabres into this. I mean, it's a
factual,
real thing.
It's like factual information.
This is not a fan opinion. Like I get it. I'm a New York Rangers fan. You can hate me all you want, but I've had my fair share of not so fun things the Jets and the Mets and the Knicks. So, and listen, the Sabres have a great roster. They're going to turn that thing around as well.
But the Sabres have also, for the last 20 years, been one of the worst franchises in all of sports. And that's what you were saying, is you're comparing the recent lack of success from the team you cover to that.
You don't bad luck the whole thing into 10 plus years of playoff lists. Like I have watched
been there.
The Jets
I've
are at
seen
fault
it.
for this. Okay. The Sabres have to be at fault for this somehow. It's at the Kings are at fault for that for somehow. Although I say in the NBA, where you play and what market you have somehow it does matter. It's way worse. The Jets, though, and the Sabres, they've made their own graves a few different times.
Hockey, too. I don't know a lot about hockey, but everyone tells me it's actually the league designed to have the most parity, too.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's really hard not
player
to stumble into
retention
it.
and development is I don't want to say easy, but it's very streamlined. I mean, yes, no doubt.
All right, so let's get into some of the
Bring it back.
nitty-gritty.
Let's wrap that back in.
Let's get into some of the nitty-gritty here. We're going to start with this Jets defense against the Bills offense. I think, the biggest area of, I'm sure, excitement for Jets fans and the biggest area of concern for Bills fans is this Jets front against the Bills offensive line.
Right.
I think if you pick out, maybe in the whole game, this is the biggest potential opportunity and advantage for the Jets. So we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the freaking grizzly bear in a uniform that you put there at number 95. Some of the other pieces around there. What's the latest on Carl Lawson? How ready is he? Is Jermaine Johnson ready to take a step? Is Will McDonald ready to contribute right off the bat? I know Quinn Williams is going to be a monster. Maybe he takes even another step. Maybe we start seeing a Chris Jones or an Aaron Donald 17, 18 sacks or something crazy. But I think he has to be an area of focus. When he's an area of focus, it's really going to come down to who else could take advantage. Who do you see ready to most do that with the rest of that group on the front?
I think Jermaine Johnson would be my answer, right? I think now Carl's interesting. I'm glad you brought him up. He missed a lot of practice with a back injury, which always scares you, but he has returned to practice to prepare for this game. We'll see what capacity that is. That could be an inactive, that could be 7 snaps, that could be 35 snaps. Like who the heck knows, right? Yeah. So when you look at it, though, the glass half full is that their young guys just had the summer of their lives. And Jermaine Johnson couldn't be blocked in every preseason game. We'll see if that translates. Will McDonald, listen, the nice thing about Will McDonald is exactly what he could do as a rookie. And that is on 3rd and long, pin his ears back and give you a variety of pass rush moves that work. He's not going to be an early down player. He's not going to be this stalwart run defender right now. Bryce Huff has really, I mean, you guys have seen a lot of Bryce already because he's a young guy that's already kind of found his footing, but it feels like Bryce can unlock double-digit sacks in the right role. I think in Saleh's defense with the way they rotate, I don't think that's going to happen for him, but I think if you put him on a defense where it's like, hey, buddy, you're going to play 85% of the snaps, he could probably get you 10 sacks. So they're a really impressive front because they're deep and they have the high-end talent, and they also have the skill sets to really be well-rounded, right? Where you looked at them for a while and you're like, man, they could really rush the passer, but outside of Quinnen, who's going to stop the run? And then they go sign Al Woods. And it's like, okay, now we have a 2-gapping nose tackle. And Jermaine Johnson's really a run defending edge before pass rush, then he just, turned into a berserker this summer. So we'll see how that translates. So the way they can rotate these guys, they can also rotate the interior. They like to play John Franklin Myers inside and outside. They like to play Michael Clemens inside and outside. They signed Quentin Jefferson, who I think is going to just stumble into 5 or 6 sacks this year because he's a guy. It's 3rd and long. Okay, you're next to Quinnen. Get up the field and go. It's a really unique unit. Now, fortunately for the Bills, Josh Allen is one of those guys that could truly pull a rabbit out of his hat and give you a long day, no matter how much your offensive line is getting beat in front of you. But this Jets defensive line against quarterbacks that don't have that escapability and don't have that big frame to take hits, like, not to get ahead of myself, I'm fascinated to watch this Jets unit against the Dolphins. I think that a lot of teams are going to have to quick game the Jets with the rush they have. The Bills don't because of Allen. He's very unique, but a lot of teams will have to quick game the heck out of the Jets this year just because of how good that front 4 is. And it's not 4 guys. They got about 9 capable defensive line bodies this year.
Well, I mean, even if we go back into Josh's history, Dolphins fans talk trash, and I'll just throw Josh's numbers at them. Like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
It's an odd strategy.
although there have been some wins here or there, and the Bills have had the upper hand over Josh's stretch and the outcomes. The results haven't been pretty. The Jets by far have had the biggest challenge to Josh's production, efficiency, the big plays that he would hit. It hasn't been pretty against the Jets. So there certainly has been some element of recipe there. And I think, again, it's not all that complicated when you look at some of the talent. Going back a layer here, let's go to the linebackers. You talked about Quincy Williams coming on. You go back 18 months ago, I probably would have been out there questioning, how much does CJ Mosley have left? Has he lost a step? What's there? All of a sudden, last year, the man looked pretty rejuvenated to me. Where are you feeling on? He's probably one of the elder statesmen. I mean, obviously not to Rodgers' degree, and Elwood's is different coming in late here. Most of the core, very young, very much developing together. He was a high-priced bolt-on, different than those guys, and now is towards the end of that run. Do you think he still has his full peak of his powers left?
I think so, in a way. Maybe not as a pure in-space coverage kind of guy. Sure. He's always been more instincts and smarts in that area anyway, so he still has that. But he's just got to stay healthy. I think that it is interesting because it's such a young unit when you look around. He really is the old guy, I think he was 2nd-team All-Pro last year, so you're right. He had a huge resurgence. He was healthy. It's funny because the games he's looked not like himself in a Jets uniform, you go back and you watch the tape and you're like, man, he is trying to cover up for guys around him that should not be starting in the NFL. And this isn't last year. This is 2 years ago when that Jets roster was in a totally different place. Like playing next to Gerard Davis, it was like, oh my God, this is not fair to Mosley. And now he has more talent around him where things are a little bit more simplified. And I think that's, the Jets are really a team that's built to rush and cover. Their front 4 is asked to get upfield and rush. The guys on the back end are obviously asked to cover. Now, all of that sounds great, but you sit there and go, well, you could probably run against them then. And I think you can, but fortunately, CJ in the middle is the guy that limits all of that. Like if Mosley misses time, you're going to be able to capitalize in the middle of the field against this Jets team. But he's just such a steady force, reading his keys, stopping the run, lining everybody up, seeing things before they happen. So with Mosley, do I think the physical ability is the same as when he was a Baltimore Raven? Maybe not there. It's still close. But that mental ability he's always had is pretty rarefied air.
So the last one on the defensive side of the ball, obviously Sauce, again, the same idea as Quinn, and I'd love to talk trash or give a hard time about always kind of grabby. Yeah, he's also in ridiculous position every single time and can just go step for step with almost everybody. I'm excited to see Diggs try to go at him because he will.
Yeah, good matchup.
My questions on some of the other pieces there, I think DJ Reed's really strong. One of the only new pieces there is Tony Adams stepping in. And there's obviously opportunity because LaMarcus Joyner wasn't some fantastic answer there before. So I think in the limited spaces, I think some people rightfully have excitement about what Adams could do. One, do you think it's going to be Adams? And two, do you think he's ready for that role?
It's going to be him because they bubble wrapped him this summer. And I wish I had something to tell you about him in terms of where he's at as a player. We just see so little of him. It sounds like he was great in camp. and he really didn't need to play much this preseason. They think his range is pretty unique, but we just don't know. And the safety position is so fascinating because they think they have this gem in Tony Adams that's more of your back end guy, and they went out and traded a day 3 pick for Chuck Clark, who would be a perfect front end guy.
Yeah.
Chuck goes down with a season-ending injury in OTAs. Jordan Whitehead remains on the roster. They sign Adrian Amos for depth. Amos and Whitehead now are really more of those box kind of players.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a lot of pressure on a guy in Tony Adams that was a UDFA 2 years ago. I mean, really. So you want to talk about a variable on this team? And you're right. The good thing is the bar to clear of what Joyner was last year is so low.
It's pretty low.
It's so low. I mean, the saddest Jet stat for how great their defense was last year, the saddest Jet stat was Joyner led the team with 3 interceptions. I mean, They got to ramp up the takeaways, and he wasn't very good last year. So if Tony Adams is even a hair better than Joyner and calls in 4 or 5 picks, it's an upgrade. But I think the Jets have bigger expectations for him, especially the guys he gets to play around. It makes his life a little bit easier. So I love to sit here and think I know everything about this team, and the amount of hours I put into watching them, studying them, and analyzing them, and doing SMY TV with them. You, like us three, know about the same of what to expect from Tony Adams because we have seen so little of the former UDFA.
Well, we've got some of that too. Over on our side of the ball here, we can talk about a little bit how you guys are going to attack the offense, or the offense is going to attack the Bills defense here. But I'm really excited for this one. I think Greg maybe got the sexier matchup this week in going that side of the ball. I think Bills defense versus the Jets offense, to me, is really where I'm super interested to see, because obviously we've gone through here in Buffalo a lot of changes, getting Sean McDermott in and Leslie Frazier out. Tremaine Edmonds is out, right? Terrell Bernard now is starting, same kind of setup where he's been hurt all summer. We don't know what to expect out of that middle linebacker position. So a lot of change from previous matchups, but obviously the biggest change of all was Jets were pretty toothless towards the end after losing Breece Hall on the offensive side of the ball, and their wins came via defense. Now you add Aaron Rodgers, you're getting Hall back healthy, you've added weapons. Talk to me a little bit overall, because earlier you said if it was going to be a coach sort of that you were worried about, it was going to be Hackett. And obviously we've got experience with Hackett here in Buffalo. Before we get into the individual pieces, adding Rodgers to this offense with the weapons you've got, kind of overall, what is that expectation right now for what this offense can be?
Right. You don't need anyone to be a superhero, because you think you could still lean on the defense, but you need to be capable, especially when you're going against, whether it's Josh Allen or, to be fair, Miami's offense, or a lot of teams. I mean, the Jets are going to play the Chiefs on Sunday night earlier in the season. They're going to see the Cowboys. I mean, a lot of potent offenses that you need to be able to counter with your own. Now, the offense is in a weird state because, you want to ramp it up, and you don't think week 1 Rodgers is going to be, in sync with everything. I think the connection with Garrett Wilson is real. Yeah. That's been going on since OTAs.
I hope so. I just took him in fantasy. So
I mean, he's going to be fed like 160 targets. He's a fantasy darling. Yeah. You have Lazard there, who we know what he is, and Rodgers knows what he is. So that's good. But we don't expect Breece to be Breece at least the first 6 weeks of the season. And that's why you brought in Dalvin Cook. But Dalvin Cook's coming off the shoulder injury. He hasn't practiced a lot. So it feels like this 40-40 Breece and Dalvin split with 20% Michael Carter. They're still trying to get everybody back up to speed with that. In terms of what the offense will be, it's funny to watch this league gravitate towards 11 personnel, having 3 wide receivers on the field nonstop. I mean, I always say this. You look at like McVay is the leader of it, 91%. It's insane. I think the Jets will be on the lower end. I think they'll hover around like 65% 11 personnel, and that's because they'll gravitate towards having 2 tight ends or 2 backs on the field. They want Cook and Breece on the field together. They want to use a fullback. They want heavier sets. I'm sure some of that is to, at times, park a tight end next to a tackle and keep Aaron Rodgers upright. I'm sure some of it is a power run game thought as well, sustaining drives. And I think some of it is Hackett. They go from a young play caller in the floor that's, hey, load the field with wide receivers and run outside zone all day, which is what all the young guys love to do in this league, whether it's Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, all the guys from the Niners tree under Shanahan. And I think with Hackett, there'll be some heavier sets. There'll be some more power run game. They will take their shots off play action down the field, but they'd feel like they don't need to go empty to do that. So, and quite frankly, their personnel doesn't align with that. Corey Davis retired. Lazard and McCole Hardman are fine, right? But they're not looking to get their 3 Ferrari receivers on the field like some of these teams want to do. So it'll be very interesting to diagnose the differences, but I think that's the main one I expect from a personnel standpoint. Now, if it works is another story, and it'll be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, so we obviously we know Rodgers. We don't have to go into too much detail there. We kind of skimmed over that running back room and sort of the splits there. That tight end room, to me, looking at it, super interesting because these are all names: Tyler Conklin, C.J. Uzomah, and Jeremy Ruckert that have been on my free agent watch list or draft list, and I paid a lot of attention to them. And just nobody that's going to just blow you away and be like, this is a top end tight end, but all three guys that can contribute in those roles that you talk about when if you're going a little bit heavier, going 12 personnel. And we know in the NFL right now, while it's not the trend, 12 personnel works, right? You get some of these smaller defense. Everybody's trying to stop those McVay offenses. You get some of the big guys on the field. What have you seen out of this room of young guys?
Right. Everybody wants to just live with two linebackers on the field. So if you can catch them off guard and you get a fullback up on, or a moving blocking tight end on one of those linebackers, it makes life hell if somebody can win the corner.
It's like the crook, the one thing, Taron Johnson. I love Taron Johnson's game, but you get a big guy on him and it can take him right out of a play.
I think that happened to him against the Jets last year on one play, I want to say too. So, and it happens to everybody. I mean, yeah, so I think when you look at the tight ends, you nailed it. It's definitely quantity over quality. Conklin is a good pass catcher, not a blocker. Uzomah, more of the opposite. He's solid blocker, a very mediocre pass catcher. Ruckert's the unknown. I think Ruckert's the best blocker of the three. Whatever he brings to the table as a pass catcher, we don't know what to expect. I thought he was good in the red zone in college in Ohio State. I think he was great on the move as a blocker. I think he's going to play a lot more than people think. So I really think they like to use all those guys. They're going to do this with their wide receivers too, not named Garrett Wilson. They're going to play Lazard. They're going to play Hardman. They're going to this makes you laugh. They're going to play Randall Cobb. It might be doses, but he will get on the field. So it's so funny to be the Jets offense because besides the line, which was a revolving door in summer, it feels like they finally got healthy and we'll see how long all of that goes. But besides the line, Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, it's just a carousel of players. It's not a bad thing. It's not that they're trying to figure out who the hell could play. It's just that they all do little niche things differently, especially why Breece Hall is trying to get healthy.
Oh, for sure. And let's talk about that line, because if I'm looking at this as an offensive coordinator, or just as a team in general, I'm looking at this offensive line as, hey, maybe this is the chink in that armor for the Jets where we can really get to an older quarterback that, he's been known to have that same, not Josh Allen-like, but ability to extend plays and do stuff out of the pocket. Is that still there? Can we get to him and hit him? You saw last year, that's, when he got uncomfortable, he was getting hit. How are you guys feeling? You said it's starting to come together. You're starting five now. How do you feel after going through the summer? Where's your starting five at, and how you feeling about it?
This unit on paper is capable. It's just always health with them, right? And that's the game you play when you.
That's the whole league, right?
I mean, that's the league. It's the game you play though too when your left tackle is almost 40 and Dwayne Brown. I love Dwayne Brown. He's a warrior, but I mean, listen. Out there at almost 40 is tough sledding, and he played.
I'm almost 40, and I just had to call it quits on the golf course today over a back. So
the deal.
Dwayne Brown has no business being out there. I'm telling you right now.
I mean, he played with one shoulder last year. He got the shoulder fixed up this offseason, so he missed most of the camp. Laken Tomlinson had a down year. McGovern's fine at center, and they also have Tippmann waiting in the wings, so they got some depth at center. They're fine there.
How's ABT covering?
ABT is their best offensive lineman. He's back, ready to roll. He's their right guard. He honestly might be their best tackle.
That was a torn pec for him.
Tricep. Yep.
Tricep.
Yep. So he's back, ready to roll. And then the biggest development of why this line isn't like panic meter is Becton won the right tackle job in deciding fashion. I mean, he didn't seem comfortable playing there when it got brought up in the spring. And then by the end of summer, it was like, he looks great there. He's comfortable there. Obviously this would be a different game to me if Von Miller is playing. I've said that to everybody. It's just a totally different game in my eyes if Von Miller is playing in terms of how you analyze that unit. And it's not that the Bills won't have their wins against this offensive line. They will. The Bills aren't a one-man defensive line unit. Like when Von's out, it's not that they just don't play.
I mean, the data suggests
the data's pretty jarring. Yeah. And that's life when you take away a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL from his unit, right? Like that's the funny thing to me. That's how it goes. So I think that they will scheme to help this group. I think that if they stay healthy, they will be fine because Becton is talented. ABT is a great player. Laken, Dwayne Brown, and McGovern are capable. You never want the weak link, right? And until this team has an injury, this could be said about a lot of lines. they don't really have that weak link on this line. I thought Lakin was a little rough last year, but you expect them to at least be okay this year. Not great, good, Pro Bowl, nothing like that. But the Jets, where they got tested last year is they didn't have the depth to survive waves of injuries in it. They got devoured up front in the trenches. So it's something that, like, you can't really talk about it week one because they got through camp and they're ready to roll week one against the Bills. But if we have this conversation for Jets, Bills, and Buffalo in the middle of November, and there's one or two guys missing, the conversation completely changes.
You coming up for that, by the way?
No.
Oh, come on,
No.
come get some wings.
Listen, number one, I would love to. If SMY was like, hey, we're going to do the game from the lot, I would love to. We don't even do the games from MetLife. We do it from the studio in World Trade Center.
Yeah.
But as somebody who's been to Barville, I would absolutely die to go back up to Buffalo.
All right. Well, the invitation extends anytime.
Thank you, fellas.
Obviously.
I would love to do Jets Bills. I don't find it to be hostile like like other fan bases. Like I'll tell you right now, I would never go to Foxborough. I don't even think I'd go to a game in Miami. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think it would be enjoy. I'm not saying anyone's violent. I'm just saying I don't know how much I'd really enjoy it.
Sure.
There's definitely a rivalry element. There's a competitive element, but both our teams have kind of been down for long enough that there's not
an understanding, right?
There was never, like, neither team was dominant over the other one to any point that mattered in any of our adult lives.
And
like,
I will say,
everybody
like,
had stretches, but there's hatred. Long term, I hate the Dolphins more than I hate the Patriots, just because growing up that way.
Yeah.
And then the 20 years obviously made it that it was hard not to hate the Patriots. But I disliked the Jets.
In those 90s years, the Jets weren't really.
They weren't.
It wasn't more of a hammer versus a nail than it was a rivalry.
The Jets were awful.
Yeah.
Like early mid 90s. Parcells rebuilt it where they were great in 98. And then they were just like up and down through the 2000s. They're actually like pretty consistently competitive. And then obviously after 2010, they fell off a complete cliff. So you're right. They really don't align very often. You're 100%. It's very odd.
In our adult lives, there has not been, anyone.
This is the most I can remember.
This year in 30 plus years, this aligns more than any other teams that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, it's very odd. I'm 31, and I have that's my exact recollection of it, is that I don't remember where the stakes were this high for both. It was always just looking right at the Dolphins or the Patriots.
Yep.
So before we get to the prediction, do you think we'll see a Connor McGovern jersey swap?
That would be amazing. I would love that so much. It makes a lot of sense if you're them.
Yeah. So hey, all right.
There's not a lot of opportunities to do that.
No, that's
only one.
That's a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
They got to do it. I wonder if
like
things are so intense week one, it's like more of a November thing.
It might be.
Yes, I agree. So speaking of that intensity, speaking of the attention and everything that we have going here, what do you expect to see Monday night? Give us a score prediction.
Man, predicting week one, complete hell, right?
So
it really is. It's so bad. It's like we know nothing. It's how it always is.
And something wonky's gonna happen.
You're right. Something weird is going to happen in this game that could ultimately decide the game, whether it's a special teams thing, a bad call, who really knows, a bad injury, hopefully not either.
Knock on that mahogany.
That's the one thing we don't want on either side. Yeah, exactly. So I say it like this when I predict this game. We talk about this team way too much on the Badlands pod I do, which is very Jets centric. And the Jets, to me, like when you predict their schedule wide, I feel like I've predicted a split with Buffalo this year, which they split with them last year, but it was much different fashion. Like that win at MetLife was a big surprise. The game up in Buffalo was a complete mess when Mike White got sawed in half. This year, assuming Rodgers is healthy, you really think there's going to be some battles here. So the reason I'm thinking the Jets don't win this game is that, will this be the best version of the Jets this year? It's week one. Rodgers is still getting used to it. They're still constructing this offense, all of that, all these excuses, blah, blah, blah. Nope. The Bills still haven't seen Brees, I'm pretty sure, in his career, which is wild. And they won't really see the real Brees on Monday night, honestly. Like, let's just be real about it. That's the reason why it's hard to pick the Jets in this game. The reason why it's easy to, or at least convincing to pick the Jets in this game is, well, this is the game you're not dealing with Von Miller. That's pretty big. This is the game you're home. You're not going up to Buffalo, which you have to do in November. So if I believe they split, you would think it's more likely the Jets win this game than the November game up in Buffalo on the road where you're assuming Von Miller is back and all of that. So this game is going to be decided by one score. There's no doubt in my mind it might be decided by, honestly, a field goal. And I think the Bills are favored by exactly a field goal in this game.
I've seen 2.5. I think is the most
2.5.
common
I'm sure
number.
it's jumping.
It started at 1.5, went up to 2.5, but it's right around there at a field goal.
Yeah, I'm not in any way I'm not in any way worried if the Jets don't have a great start with these first 6 weeks where they got the Chiefs, the Bills, the Cowboys, all this stuff. It's not like panic for me. It's like you go 3-3 and then capitalize on the second half of the schedule. But the Jets would like to have this one, and I don't want to say they have to have this one, but I'm predicting that they get this one because I think they split. I think there's an easier road in this one than the November game for sure. But man, like I said, week 1, this is the least confident I'll be in a Jets prediction throughout the season all year. Both sides, because I call it like it is. When they're not good, I predicted them to have 5 to 6 wins. When I think they're going to lose a week, I'll tell them they're going to lose that week. It's so interesting to me that they split last year because it just almost doesn't make sense. It feels like this year they are destined for a split with the way you look at these rosters. But I mean, the Bills are still favored by a wide margin in this division for good reason. They're still the team to beat. And even if the Jets pulled this one out in week 1, it's a really, really long season that could go all the way down to the wire. I didn't pick the Jets to win the division for whatever it's worth. I picked the Jets to make the playoffs. I think they get one of the wild card spots. I still pick the Bills to win this division. But if the Jets can't capitalize and feed off of the September 11th game, all the new, all the change, all the energy, you're at home. Once again, the Von Miller thing is really, really big. It feels like they don't have to have this one, but they kind of need it.
Mm-hmm.
So one last one here. Carl asked a question for you. With John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff taking turns at right tackle Spencer Brown, will they get to Josh Allen like last year? I mean, that could literally decide it.
And if you're the Bills, don't you have to know that? I feel like Dawson.
You're gonna see Dawson Knox.
Dawson Knox has to have the emergency break next to Spencer Brown.
Bolt him on next to it the whole time.
Yeah, that's why I'm not overreacting to that. And I mean, that's how the Jets closed out the win last year. Bryce Huff was just I know John Franklin Myers and Bryce Huff have had dominance against Spencer Brown. I think the Bills are aware of that. Yeah. I think they'll help him. I think they'll help him.
I haven't stopped thinking about that game.
I'm aware
to happen. I've never felt less secure in my fanhood than watching Josh just get ripped at every single time he dropped out.
The craziest thing is, Gabe Davis really almost could have caught that ball at the end of that game.
I just had that conversation today with somebody. You got to go watch the throw right after that.
Ball went 70+ yards in the air, and it hit him directly in the chest.
I say it all the time. I am Sauce supporter number 1. He's great. He's awesome. That ball really could have been caught, and it's it was
almost like a what was that, Rookie of the Year movie,
right?
Where Josh Allen unlocked even more arm somehow after the injury.
Yeah, the tendon injury somehow made it go farther.
It might be the craziest incompletion of last year's NFL season. I think that honestly really encapsulates this matchup this year. I just think one play can decide it for either side, and that's why you kind of lean on a split. We'll see.
So tell the folks where else they can find you and what good things you have coming up.
Yeah, so if you like the draft, NFL Stock Exchange on PFF, I'm sure everybody's been drafting for fantasy. We are on Monday to Friday the entire season, live on Peacock, Sirius Radio, every podcast format, YouTube. Me, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. That's on NBC. So that's been a lot of fun. It's also the nicest way. You go to work in the morning, it's okay, let's recap the primetime game the night before. So that's been really good. Everything else is at Connor J. Rogers on Twitter. I appreciate you guys let me do a little promo. I won't list all the jobs. It's too long and it's a waste of everyone's time. Although I'm sure there's some Bills fans that are Mets fans. I do run into that.
Honestly, I see Mets gear around Buffalo all the time.
That makes me really happy that it's not taken over by Yankees fans.
There's a lot of Yankees fans
or Blue Jays.
I see Mets.
There's more, but I would say it's probably third. It's probably Yankees, Blue Jays, and then Mets. I think it's probably third. But there is a healthy chunk.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what? They share a lot of similar sports fan feelings. As a Jets Mets fan, I can absolutely align with that. So it's good it is good that the Bills have been good, because you know what? You waited so long to have a competitive football again, and that's what the Jets fans are feeling right now. Just go out and be competitive. Let's not be talking about the draft in October. That's all. It's all we ask for at this point.
So a guy from Twitch said that this show is the perfect evolution of Grade. That's really good.
Really, that's nice.
Good. That's really good.
That's spot on.
All right, Connor, appreciate your time. We'll talk soon, and hopefully a nice, healthy game for everybody involved and more entertaining down the line.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Appreciate
fellas.
you,
Talk soon. Later.
Appreciate it. Always awesome to have Connor on. He's fantastic. Make sure you guys check it out. Obviously, being able to co-host a show with Matthew Berry and everything that he's accomplishing here, more bright lights and future accomplishments
Every year he
ahead
gets bigger,
for
man.
Connor.
When we first started having him on, I felt like, okay, like he's bigger than us, but we can add. This is a guy we can ask. Now I'm glad we asked him then, because I'd feel weird hitting him up in the DMs now.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's a big
Nah,
deal,
he's way too big of a deal for us now. He's way too big of a deal for us now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no problem bringing it back now. Now he's stuck.
No, he's loyal to us.
So he's not wrong. I think he was very fair in everything that he said. I do think if I was a Jets fan, I would be telling myself the exact same thing, that this is a home matchup and everything that's there. So let's go through a little bit. We have an exciting announcement to make, and then we're going to go through some of the updates from practice, the injury report, and then we'll make our own predictions. But first, this is going to be the first time we're going to get to announce the launch of our new partner in everything that we have going on each week. We're going to be going through here. This is week 1 of season 5 of the Leftern Game Day series. It's out now. This week's print is titled Buffalo at New York. As you can see, a lot of those things floating around the internet. This is the genius that brought it to light. It was designed by local photographer and wheat paste artist Max Collins. There's 100 stamped and numbered prints that get released each week on Instagram and Twitter at Leftern Co. So make sure you give them a follow. The website to purchase it is leftern.co. You'll see that in the show description here. They go fast, so make sure you get it. When we go back out to our normal cameras, you'll see what Aaron has behind him. I have a couple myself, some of my favorite pieces of Bills memorabilia to be able to have. And again, those individuals prints are only up to 100. They're stamped and numbered each one, so it's a limited time edition. Individual prints this season help support Buffalo Cares, a local nonprofit that helps find homes for abandoned and sheltered animals locally. So this was awesome, and it was so fun. I don't normally get to be in on like inside fun things, so knowing what this was going to be as I saw it floating around the internet was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. So for those listening on podcast only, it was the picture of, you've seen it anywhere on social media, the driving into New Jersey, the welcome to New Jersey sign. Somebody plastered a Josh Allen throwing over it, and it did get picked up on a bunch of social media. I know Ryan Talbot wrote about it on Syracuse.com. So people have seen it. And yeah, we knew the whole time that Leftern and this artist was involved in that. And so it's a picture of that with a Bills fan sitting next to it, looking for a hitchhiking a ride for the game. So it's a really cool one. If you are watching live, some of these ones behind me here, I got the Cleveland Buffalo one from last year, and then I love this one. This might be my favorite, the goat head Josh Allen from Halloween. They set that up downtown, did a great one. It's just it's local artists. They're all so unique and different and cool. My wife loves them. She actually hates all of my other like Bill stuff. She thinks it's super tacky, right? Like the hand-drawn stuff she likes. But everything else is kind of tacky and autography, and she loves these prints. She couldn't get them in frames fast enough. So it really blends well with different types of design. I'm excited to see all the ones this year. I hope he previews us early on all of them like he did this.
It was kind of fun having the inside view. But so we will have those. They're going to launch every Wednesday night. They'll be available on his social media feed at 7 p.m. and we'll be debuting them out to the audience here on our show each night at 9 p.m., sharing them with the world on YouTube and Twitter. So make sure you check it out. Going to be a great time to be able to take advantage of it. And we will be working on this Leftern Fresh Design of the Week as a segment going forward. We'll be kind of talking about the matchup and the things that we want to see as a wrinkle, like maybe the thick dime. Maybe that's the fresh design that I want to see involved here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the practice reports that we saw. One, we had announcements of some, starting position things announced today. So a few of them were very much assumed. O'Cyrus Torrence officially named over Ryan Bates. O'Cyrus Torrence started all 3 preseason games. I think that was very much assumed. Hardy was listed as the starting slot receiver, even though I think Sherfield will get
Isabella wasn't?
He was not. He's on the practice squad, so he's not listed on the depth chart. Although I heard some people frustrated that Christian Kirksey wasn't on the depth chart because he's also on the practice squad. Damian Harris was listed ahead of Latavius Murray, but the two that really were in question, Sean McDermott named Terrell Bernard the starting middle linebacker, and Christian Benford named the starting corner over Dane Jackson and, of course, Kyer Elam. So first, any surprises with Torrance, Hardy, Harris over Murray? I think all those were pretty assumed.
Yeah, I think that was all where I was at. And the Harris over Murray, I mean, It's also, I think somebody in the Slack channel was saying, oh, wow, Tim Settle really beat out Puna Ford when he looked at the depth chart. Some of this is going to be situational touches and who's getting what looks based on how the defense is operating, how the other offense is operating, what type of offense they run. I think it'll be
might not even be
situational.
competing for the same role per se.
I don't know. Yeah, I think these early depth charts, like, yeah, the starters you glean more from, but those depth guys, like some of that stuff they are just going to put in order because Tim Settle's been here longer, right? Like some of that stuff is how it works out. But,
And that both of them likely will be playing 25 to 30%
similar.
snaps.
Yes, and it'll be based on opponent stuff. So that much I don't look into. Benford wasn't a surprise, obviously, because he took the job late, but it felt like really like in one of those races that they do at the Bison Stadium, like blue cheese came out of nowhere. Christian Benford, not that he was out of nowhere.
I certainly thought it was going to be named Dane Jackson. I had
was
actually
trending Dane Jackson until the
wrote
last
it
2
off.
weeks.
I had wrote it off that he had it and that it was Jackson's job. So I was obviously I saw the breadcrumbs other people saw most recently. Obviously him starting that Bears game. But I won't lie, I was surprised. I really thought it was going to be Dane Jackson. I'm not disappointed, but I'm surprised.
Yeah, no, so that one was a little bit of a surprise, but I still maintain we'll see all three of those corners this year, and there'll be some types of rotations. I don't think that's all settled yet. But obviously the big one was Terrell Bernard, right?
Yeah,
like him being the starter, especially you were, I know Eric has done a good job of putting out what his expectations of who should be, what the pecking order for getting looks at that middle linebacker should be. I know you tried to warn fans that you were at training camp and maybe we didn't see it in preseason because he was hurt and that he was actually practicing really well. And a lot of that stuff happens.
He looked
in
great.
Practice.
Very fluid.
But there's so much unknown here. So this is the big one that's going to keep everyone up until Monday night with anxiety heading into this matchup. What did you see from him that made you think before preseason games, obviously, that, hey, if he gets past this injury, this is the best chance for a starter?
So one, there's been this weird drumbeat that we needed to start Dorian Williams because he was so much better of an athlete
than AJ Klein.
Well, of course he is. Yes, of course Dorian Williams is a better athlete than Balen Spector, AJ Klein, and Terrell Dotson. And then Terrell Bernard is a slightly better athlete than Dorian Williams. So this idea that Terrell Bernard was this slow, clunky, small, just like
people thought that?
Instincts guy. The number of people that told me we needed to start Dorian Williams and their number one reason was because he's so much of a better athlete blew my mind.
Crazy.
Terrell Bernard's faster than Dorian Williams. He's the better athlete. He actually had, if you look at the fact that his the RAS score, relative athletic score, it's just a conglomeration of the all the things you do at the combine. The fact that he was an 8.88 while being as small as he was means he was really elite.
Explosive.
All his scores were crazy explosive, great or above, great or elite in everything. So
on film, he's like a much more smooth. Dorian Williams is like he does have that explosion, but it's kind of like a downhill explosion. Where Bernard is more in space athleticism.
So when you talk about what did you see, that's what we saw. It was how fluidly, and you saw some of the things that got picked out. I know we kind of gave Steve Mathis a hard time about a couple clips that he showed of Terrell Dotson, and that some of them, the responsibility might not have been highlighted right, but how slow it took him to drop into coverage was not. That was real. Those were the things I was talking about was, he turned and ran with Trent Sherfield and didn't get lost. He turned and ran with Dalton Kincaid and didn't get lost. He could move in space. So obviously you can't see run defense. I can't see, him coming up and filling a gap when it's in camp and it's in shells or it's just there. But I can see movement in space. I can see movement in coverage. He by far stood out as the more fluid athlete, the most fluid athlete of all of those linebackers. So that was the reason I defaulted to him was that, pass defense matters more than run defense. We brought in some big-bodied defensive tackles. This guy's going to be able to help us cover in a modern pass defense, and we'll figure out the rest later. All that said, I'm glad it turned out that way. I won't be upset if Christian Kirksey takes that job in a couple weeks. But if Terrell Bernard plays well enough, he could maintain it. the bar is really low, man. Like we're not going to have a superstar middle linebacker. I don't even know if we're going to have good middle linebacker play all season long. If we can just get adequate, like slightly below average linebacker play, and then everyone else in the defense, I think has a chance to be pretty good. He's surrounded by an all-pro to his left, former all-pros behind him, probably a deserving slot all-pro to the other side of him in Taron Johnson, a healthy Trey White, who I think Sal Capaccio put out there as his sneaky MVP candidate of how good he's looked. Lots of good and elite play all the way around them, but a really deep, good off defensive line in front of him. We just need him to not be so bad that he's the guy that you isolate and go pick on. That's all we need. Just don't be an automatic gimme. Don't be the weak link. Just be just good enough. And I think he can be. I think he can be just good enough. Now, maybe he could be more than that. We haven't seen more than that. There's always potential for those things, but that's where my expectation is that he's going to be good enough not to get picked on, good enough not to be isolated and be the focus of the offensive coordinator's game plan, and move in space and cover the way he's supposed to, and then be okay in run support. And then unfortunately, that's kind of as high as our bar goes here, because if it flips the other way, Christian Kirksey will be better against the run, but he's probably not going to cover as well as Terrell Bernard. There's going to be a flaw either way. I think that he's going to be good enough for us to be successful. And if you go back and look at the Chiefs roster last year, the Rams roster the year before, and the Buccaneers roster the year before that, there's several spots in those starting lineups who were also just good enough for them to win a Super Bowl.
I think he's going to get picked on no matter what, because it's just where else are you going to go with the ball against this Bills defense? You're not going to go pick on Trey White. You kind of want to stay away from those safeties if they're healthy and playing like they do. You might go to Christian Benford a little bit, but I think the opportunities, if I'm an offensive coordinator, no matter who it is, if it's Kirksey or Bernard, to your point. So I do think they'll get pinpointed. And just want to set that up for fans in the conversation that we're about to have with these linebackers. I just know it's going to be really casual and calm and nuanced, and everyone's going to totally understand exactly what these guys are doing. That is not going to happen at all. We're going to have crazy discussions, and people are going to see receptions given up or run plays at the linebacker, and they're not going to tolerate imperfections. And no matter, to your point, no matter who you get, there's going to be imperfections. An ideal scenario is Bernard is the guy that works out just for the athleticism and the idea of a ceiling. That's the best case scenario, is that he can play an adequate role with that athleticism. I agree. But I think it's going to be a very weird situation. Feels like Kirksey is really breathing down his neck. I'm interested to see how
just a matter of time until he learns the system.
How long is this leash for Bernard? Like, what lumps can he take? Because there are going to be some. It's his first play in the NFL. Guys are going to come at him. He's going to get confused. He's going to get some of these read option looks, or what Mahomes and Kelsey would love to do to Tremaine Edmonds even years into, where they get him out in space and you got to choose. Are you coming up? Or are you staying in coverage? And he's going to make wrong decisions. And how long does Sean McDermott let that go on with Kirksey sitting right there, and you have comfort with Al Holcomb and in this type of scheme? That's going to be an interesting one to me, but I agree with you that just on paper right now, this plays out well. Do you think if Bernard plays out well to an adequate level, does that dial back your thick dime from last week, or are you still ramping up thick dime?
So I put out a prayer circle tweet earlier today that I'm really embarrassed how old I am and how long it took me to make that. It was a very humbling experience. But I made it. And I put out that my hope is 80% Terrell Bernard until Christian Kirksey's ready, and 20% Taylor Rapp. And I don't actually care if it's Bernard or Kirksey, because I think, Kirksey's got a slightly higher floor. Bernard's probably got a little higher ceiling at this stage, is just his athleticism and coverage, but they'll both be somewhat limited starting middle linebackers. And I hope both of them sit down for Taylor Rapp on anything 3rd and 7 or longer, and that we just bring in Rapp in all of those situations. And I think he's going to be a piece of that. And 20% is just me grabbing a number out of thin air. I don't know for sure that that's the number, but I think it's that ballpark.
I didn't know if your gauge went up or down. With more athleticism.
So obviously I think Rapp is more athletic than both of them, but I also think at some point you have to draw a line of how much run liability you want to invite, and that if you start making it like 50-50, and that at some point a modern NFL defense is going to introduce this, and they're going to have 6 DBs as a base thing. It's going to happen. I think it's going to happen when you get a team who has multiple Derwin Jameses, multiple like pieces you can kind of play in both spots, and both of them are kind of overhang, half linebacker, half safety, half big nickel kind of thing. And if you have 2 of those, even bigger than Taylor Rapp, that's where I think a team's going to really test it out of, hey, what is a safety versus what is a box safety versus what is a linebacker. And if we had, 2 prime Jordan Poyers, that would be it. Like 2 from like 2 or 3 years ago, 2 of those 28-year-old Jordan Poyers, would we maybe try to deploy that in this situation and put one of those on each side of Matt Milano? I think a defense will try that. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I think Taylor Rapp's going to let McDermott dip his toe in that water.
All right. Keeping with the fresh look theme, flipping over to the offensive side of the ball, not as much changes. Obviously, you got Ken Dorsey coming back, but he has been given more and new and interesting tools at his disposal. And kind of circling back to the conversation when the year ended, I went back and actually just watched our show from that loss, which was a terrible idea. But one of the things that we were talking most about, and one of our biggest frustrations at the end of the season last year, was, yes, this offense put up almost historical data and numbers for stretches of the season, but it felt like there was a lot of frustration with Gabe Davis. There was a lot of frustration with Dawson Knox. And when we really dug into what were those frustrations, it kept coming back to Ken Dorsey. And here's a quote from Aaron Schatz's almanac from, FTN.com now that he's with?
Yeah, FTN Fantasy. Yep.
FTN Fantasy. We got the almanac. And here's a quote that I wanted to read to you, Greg. He was first talking about Dable, and then the quote is, Dorsey, on the other hand, looked very much like a first-time play caller. He ran what was comfortable for him. His 70% usage rate of 11 personnel was 8th in the NFL, which we just heard Connor talking about a lot of young guys use. The problem is not that the Bills were not good out of it. Their 30.6% DVOA at 11 personnel was the best in the league, but rather that they leaned in on it despite succeeding elsewhere. Buffalo also finished with the third best 26.2 offensive DVOA in 12 personnel, for example, but only ran that in 4% of their plays, the lowest rate of 12 personnel in the league. And so you've added Dalton Kincaid, right? You have Dawson Knox. You've added some bigger running backs. There has been a push, at least at Brandon Beane's level, to force this on Ken Dorsey. Are we going to get the fresh look on the offensive side of the ball that we thought that we're going to get? Because we haven't got to the preseason. Knox got hurt. We didn't get to see as much of the 2 tight ends. We just saw Dalton go out there and do his thing. Is this going to be the look that we think it is, where you're going up against some of these smaller defenses and you're really putting it to them?
So I think obviously everything you see in the preseason should be taken with a grain of salt. I think it very much should be, with a skeptical eye. One piece that I think they needed to be able to test out, because we didn't have joint practices, you can only do so much in practice and in scrimmage settings, was they needed to get some looks. They ran 39% 12 personnel, which I believe this preseason was the most in the NFL, the highest percentage of any team. So I had tempered expectations the whole time, being like, hey, maybe we go from 4%, which was the lowest, and I always would add in the caveat of, well, that doesn't really count Reggie Gilliam, and we had a little bit more than that, but maybe we go from that to middle of the road, and it's going to be 20% or 25%. I don't think it's great. Maybe we do run 35 or 40% 12 personnel. Maybe we do. And I think that them showing that, even without a healthy Dawson Knox for 2 of the games, or one of the games, which however much he missed, I think we have to be open to that possibility, and I now have to assume it's going to be more than I expected, and that we are now at a minimum going to be above average in our 12% usage, and maybe we are a top 5 team in 12 personnel usage. Now, what that does, I think, gives us some interesting things, because now you can look at, one, I've talked about it over and over again, bolting Dawson Knox onto Spencer Brown, help protect Josh Allen. I don't care how much of that percentage of his usage is blocking versus patch catching. That's a valuable thing. Nobody gives the San Francisco 49ers a hard time about what an awesome blocker George Kittle is and how much money he got paid. Blocking for your quarterback is valuable too. Like that is not a lesser thing. Like people who are like, oh, we didn't pay him all that money to block. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We pay our tackles that a lot of money to block. We pay our guards a lot of money to block. It's okay if Dawson Knox can do both things, because then once he starts to block more, he'll be even more wide open on the leak plays when he goes out there because they think he's going to block. So there's lots of things that can happen that way. Also, it adds a different dynamic in because when you have two tight ends in the game, you can use, and you pointed this out in other formations, different alignment with other receivers. All of a sudden, Trent Sherfield's a really good blocking receiver, and you have, let's say, Deontay Hardy offset from him. Well, now Dawson Knox and Trent Sherfield are here in a tight end, in a wing, and Deontay Hardy behind him, and you flip a little screen there because the two receivers you had in there, you didn't need to have, you could have Diggs on the other side, and you can flip him, and now you have Dawson Knox and Trent Sherfield out in front of Deontay Hardy blocking to be able to do those kind of things. So there's a lot of fun that you can play with and be able to go in different directions. And I'm excited to see that. I do think we need to see that, but I think it's going to be a really good usage of this next step for Ken Dorsey. And I think that we're going to find out very quickly that some of that limitation and what seemed like repetitive first year limitations, I do think a piece of it was Josh's injury and taking a huge chunk out of the playbook that we saw early in the year get used that disappeared. I think some of that was Josh, and now some of it maybe Dorsey trying to protect him from himself when you really could have called some of it, and chicken or the egg kind of debate there on how much was him protecting and how much was he really couldn't. I think we see more of that brought back this year, and I think we see a sizable step forward from Ken Dorsey.
I like it, man. So that's the Leftern fresh design of the week. Now that we're past this, we're going to get to actually talk about like real football and what we're actually seeing and what these design, how we're going to tweak them going into individual matchups, which I just can't wait. I was looking through DVOA today and just thinking like in 3 weeks, DVOA is going to look so good. Like there's going to be so much to look at. But
think about next week. We're going to be talking about some of those new wrinkles we saw in this game Monday night as we get ready for the Washington Commanders.
Hopefully in a good way. So speaking of that, it's past 10 o'clock. We went over an hour.
Of course
we should do predictions and put them out there. I'm going to let you start the year. Go for it. Floor is yours.
Right. I love everyone picking the Jets. I love all of those different things. You've also seen a couple people the last couple days pointing out, be like, do you guys realize how good this Bills team was last year? And that by most measures, they got better, and that everyone's just Willie Colon went on ESPN or FX1 and picked the Bills to finish last in the AFC East. I love it. It's perfect. It fits right into, not everyone loves Sean McDermott. That's okay. It fits right into his kind of persona and the way he's going to rub that in all of their faces and put more chips on more shoulders. And I think they're going to come out. I think they're going to get after Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's going to be a perfect offensive game. This is too good of a defense to have a perfect offensive game against. There's going to be some ugly stuff. And I actually think there's probably going to be more field goals than what we like. Yeah, it's not going to be awesome that way. I'm going to go the Bills win and the Bills slightly cover, and I think a slight under. I'm going to go 26-20 Buffalo. I think the Bills have 2 touchdowns and 4 field goals, and I think they hold the Jets to 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and the Bills win 26-20. And it might come down to the end with a big defensive stop. I think it is going to be a 1-score game almost the whole time, but I've got Bills 26, Jets 20, with the Bills winning and covering.
We're super close here, Greg. First of all, I like how close we are on this, but I want to. You mentioned that I don't think people are remembering how good the Bills were. We get trapped so often in recency bias here as online collective of people, and we took what we saw at the end of that Bills season and just kind of associated that's that team. That is who this team was, and they just weren't good enough. The Buffalo defense suffered the second most adjusted games lost from injury. That was in the almanac. Buffalo still ended up the best team in the league by total DVOA, finishing in the top 5 in offense and defense. Stephon Diggs had a career year in DYAR, which is another like DVOA individual statistic for receivers, his highest ever as a receiver in the league. In weeks 1 through 9, Bills ranked 6 in total offense DVOA before obviously that Allen injury and then for the full season, Buffalo finished second to only Kansas City in offensive DVOA, posting the highest offensive pass DVOA ranking in the DVOA era since 1981. That's better than all your K-gun offenses, all your Rams greatest show on turfs.
Yeah.
Like this team was historically good for big stretches of the season. We don't have to get into the list of things that happened to him in the 2020 season as to why I believe that they just ran out of gas. But I know every team's different, and Sean McDermott's the first to say that every single year, all these teams are different, but they carried over a lot. They really did. And the foundation's here. And I think what happened, the media, Vegas is not off on the Bills, right? Vegas is still all the way in. They're right there where they probably should be.
Top 3 Super Bowl odds, favorite to win the division.
Just how I see it. Yeah, but I turn on my TV, Greg, and I just see everybody fawning over and falling in love with all the people that have new things. And the Bills didn't gain as much sexy new toys as some of the other teams, but they're gaining back a Micah Hyde, right? They're gaining back a fully healthy Trey White. At some point, they're going to get back Von Miller. So their gains were already on the roster, so it's not as sexy. And then a lot of them are just filling holes of your filling in the interior offensive line, getting a draft pick in there, like guys that maybe you don't know. And so I agree. I think that the Bills are going to be a very dominant team. The Jets are going to be really good. This one's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a high scoring, like big time AFC showdown, but I do think I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of drives that end in field goals and I think it'll be a decent amount of points, but not what you're used to in modern offenses. Yeah. I have it Bills 26, Jets 24. I think that it's a field goal to win it. I think Josh Allen gets a chance to bring the Bills down to win it with a field goal, and I think he gets it done and stuns that crowd. And I think it's a great Monday night opener, but I won't be shocked if it does flip the other way here in week 1. It's a very good team. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, we can say whatever we want about Aaron Rodgers. I think he's kind of a douchebag. I don't love watching him. I thought Hard Knocks was incredibly tough to watch, but he adds an element to that offense that they were toothless last year. Now they have him and legitimate young stars around him, more weapons than he had a year ago. They do have questions too, but I mean, you have to fear what they can do if everything starts clicking.
Yeah, 100%. And the good news is this game is one of many. We're going to play 17 no matter what. I probably said that last year and we didn't actually play 17, but I feel pretty confident this year we're actually going to play all 17 regular season games. And unfortunately, we're in a phase now where none of them individually matter all that much. If we win Monday night, it doesn't mean we're going to run off 17 in a row. If we lose Monday night, it doesn't mean the season's over. I think we have a really good team. I think we're favored in New York for a reason. I think they're going to win, and there's a lot of good things that are going to go along with it.
Yeah. At this point, man, if week 1's so wacky, I hate week 1. I hate even more that, again, we have to go through being the primetime, one of the primetime games on week 1. It's so
the very end.
At the end of all of it, they're super wonky games. So I hate to be that guy of like moral victories, and I just want to see a good game, but I really do. With it being week 1, I just don't want anything crazy wonky to happen. I do want to see them come out and go toe-to-toe with this team that the media is putting up on a pedestal. At least toe-to-toe has to be the floor where you're really giving yourself a puncher's chance at winning the game. I don't want to see the Jets come out and just, come in and put on a show for their home fans.
Like here, RC said, how would everyone feel if they smacked us 30? Either direction. One, it won't matter as much as that fan base thinks, the winning fan base thinks. It won't be as terrible as the losing fan base thinks, but it will feel terrible.
Yes.
It will feel terrible. It will be a miserable experience. The expectations for both teams are too high for either team to get smacked badly. If either of the results we said happen, even in the reverse, if the Bills lose 26-24, the Bills lose 26-20, we're going to be frustrated. It's going to be upsetting. We'll nitpick all the reasons they lost, and then we'll move on. If either team gets smacked 35-13, it will be miserable for both of those fan bases because there was just way too much expectation going into the season for either team to get beat like that.
I've still got the Stampede Sports Illustrated Sam Adams running for the touchdown week 1. Like it's week 1's crazy.
Weird stuff happens, and it doesn't usually mean what we think it means.
It does not usually mean anything.
All right, guys.
But it means football's back, Greg.
It does. Thank God. Tomorrow night we get to watch football. We may or may not watch Travis Kelce. That's a little weird. We may or may not watch Chris Jones. That's a little weird. We'll talk about that as the season goes. If you want to hear more about that, come hang out with me Sunday night at 7 o'clock. I'm going to be doing the Greg Tompsett Sports Show with a week 1 kind of around the league recap, looking at all the things that happened here in week 1. And then Aaron and I will be back here with you after the Jets game Monday night. Come and join us immediately following. And you guys know what to do. Anything you can do to help us out here, press that like button. It goes a long ways. It really, really helps us out. And one of the things that we've been very proud of is what we've built here with Cover One, and we're going to share a little bit more about that here. Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One OnePass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
We should hire those guys. They're really handsome.
I wouldn't hire them. A couple of jabronis.
All right, guys.
You
Any
mentioned
final thoughts here before we wrap.
Yeah, I do have some. You mentioned the post-game show. Obviously, we'll be here for that. The Air Raid Hour pre-game show, always having you covered as well. Make sure you're checking those guys out. I know a lot of you are always in here on the post-game show, but if you're not in on the pre-game show, I think you guys would also enjoy those guys. And then Spaces is back on Friday. So hanging out with producer Chris and Joe DeRosa and all the guys that were in Spaces last year. We're bringing it back Friday mornings, Buffalo Bill Football Friday, Twitter Spaces. So come and hang out. This is the only time Cover One we take callers officially.
There you go.
I often regret it, but the people I'm talking to now, the people that listen to us and are watching on YouTube, I'm assuming I'd be happy to have you all come on and talk to us. So make sure you check us out there.
I am really happy for you to take those callers on our behalf.
You'll be there. A couple big games, you'll be coming in.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Remember, please, the best way you can tell other folks about it is to hit that like button. That's how the algorithm works. That's how you share your recommendation for other people to check out our content. You guys have been awesome here tonight. Thank you guys so much. Everybody, so much engagement and so many comments. Thank you to our awesome host, Connor Rodgers. Make sure you're checking him out. But on behalf of our fantastic producer, Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we